Any recorded game since individual stats began to be kept in 1933. So let me bring the guys in on this subject, which I find to be fascinating. And I will say that again. That is the fewest rushing attempts any NFL team has ever had in recorded history, which goes back 87 years. So, Dominique, how do we explain what happened to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady on Sunday night?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we all thought they would be getting better as the season goes on, but that game, maybe you could say it was just a fluke. It seemed like there were a lot of unlucky things that happened to them that made it even worse, but they just played really badly. And I understand why they didn't run the ball a lot, because they were down by 100 after the first quarter. So, that's not as much a concern as it is. They need to figure out how to stop somebody. And it's not as if the Saints are some offensive juggernaut, or at least we don't think of them that way so far this season. So that defense is the reason why I like Tampa Bay, but they were a big reason why they lost last week.
Now, RC, we have made a big deal on this program in the last 2 days about the comments Bruce Arians has made, which seemed to be pointing a finger of blame at Tom Brady. He didn't say his name, but that certainly was the way that Marcus Spears took it on this show yesterday, and Jeff Saturday took it on this show yesterday. What do you make of what we can see of the relationship right now between the coach and the quarterback in Tampa?
I mean, after being on a team with BA and seeing the way that he was with Ben Roethlisberger, I think this is a total relationship thing. You know, even though Tom Brady has all the respect in the world for what he's done in his career, he didn't do those things for Bruce Arians. The Bruce Arians-Tom Brady relationship started at age 43. They haven't won 6 Super Bowls. They haven't been to 9. And so he's treating Tom Brady like he would treat any other quarterback that's his first-year quarterback. And so you're going to get these things from BA. BA is a tenured coach. BA is a coach with a lot of respect in this league. He doesn't feel like he has to walk around on eggshells and not say things that he wants to say. Now, I will say this. Back in the day, when he and Ben would go golf together and when they were homeboys that hung out in the offseason, he wouldn't do these things. He wouldn't treat Ben this way. He wouldn't get the opportunity to come out and say these things because he was just a little old offensive coordinator. That dynamic has changed. And so when he's speaking about Tom Brady, he's speaking about the game from his perspective. He's talking about a guy that plays quarterback for his team that he's actually not that close to. And I do believe there has to be, at least in some way, a power struggle in that building between the GOAT, the greatest of all time that played quarterback, and a coach that wants to coach his team and have his team a certain way. And I think sometimes we see the lack of relationship show up in Bruce Arians' comments about Tom Brady.
Now, Nick, in your notes, you said you think that this could actually wind up being Bruce Arians' best coaching moment of the season. Why?
Yeah, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think it's emotional. It's happened too many times for me to think that it's just Bruce Arians trying to coach Tom Brady through the media. Bruce Arians is a smart man, and he's a veteran coach. He knows that if he wants to tell Tom Brady something, he can go talk to Tom Brady. I think this is about Tom Brady being the greatest of all time, about Tom Brady being a 6-time Super Bowl champ who is elevated above the rest of the team. And Bruce Arians is doing this. This is a performance by him to bring Tom Brady down to the level of the rest of his teammates, because I believe that division is dangerous when you have that there. So I think that Tom is comfortable with it. I think the players, it puts Tom on their level, and it makes for a better team, because you don't want to create that division where it's like Tom is here and the rest of you are down here. No one likes the teacher's pet. So Bruce Arians is doing Tom Brady a favor. He's doing this team a favor by, whenever he gets the opportunity, making sure that everybody on that team understands that Tom Brady is just like them. He's one of them, or he's trying to make them feel like he is as close to them as possible, because I think that is healthy for the culture of the team, much healthier than having Tom Brady just out there like, oh, he can do no evil, he's perfect, and the rest of you guys better figure it out.
I get it. So let's just make this as simple as we can. The Saints are now 6-2, and the Buccaneers are 6-3. New Orleans swept the season series. We had numbers from our analytics that said before that game, the Buccaneers had a 70% chance to win the division. Now the Saints have a 70% chance. Ryan Clark, who wins the NFC South?
To me, it's going to be the New Orleans Saints. And I picked the New Orleans Saints to win the NFC South in the beginning of the season because I thought they'd be better early. But they seem to be getting healthy. They seem to be getting more cohesiveness. And so I think the Saints finish out the season winning the South.
It's going to be fascinating to see. That game really flipped a lot of people's perspective. All right, much more to do here. Right now, it is time for the tweets. Roll it. It's time for Ryan Clark to explain his tweets.
Get in the gym, bro. Well, I just got buffalo chicken dip. Baker.
Bruh. Lord. As everyone laughs at the way I read your tweet.
Other games in the original 17 weeks they were planning to. If they can't, they might add an 18th week at the end of the season and make up some games. But if they can't get all of those games made up, they would expand the playoffs 8 teams per conference, and nobody would get a bye, again, this year only. And then an interesting bit of news this week in Washington, where in the wake of the Kyle Allen injury, Ron Rivera says that Alex Smith will be the starting quarterback going forward. And last year's first-round pick, Dwayne Haskins, remains the backup. It calls into question, obviously, Haskins' future in Washington and brings up the issue of what he has to do or what he'll be able to do the rest of the year in order to make himself appealing next year to Washington or other teams. Washington wants to see him improve in practice in terms of, the way he performs on the practice field in a backup role, and they haven't given up on him yet, but it starts to look like his future might be elsewhere.
Absolutely. I've said a million times on this show and elsewhere, more young quarterbacks in the NFL are ruined than developed. I'm not saying that it is too late for Dwayne Haskins, but boy, has that been a mess. All right, now we get, speaking of messes, to an entirely different one. The SEC has called off Saturday's games between Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M and Tennessee as a result of COVID testing, which has depleted the Tigers and the Aggies rosters. This coming on the heels of Monday's decision to postpone Auburn, Mississippi State after the Bulldogs had similar issues with positive test results and subsequent contact tracing. So this is really a mess. Let me bring in Heather Dinich and Paul Feinbaum. Good morning to both of you. Heather, what more can you tell us? Because right now things feel very precarious in the SEC.
Well, Greeny, on Tuesday, all 14 SEC athletic directors agreed that December 19th, which is the day of the SEC Conference Championship game, that should also be used as a makeup date. So that's why they didn't entirely close the door on Alabama LSU and say it's canceled. Now, Alabama is obviously the front runner to win the West and play in that SEC Championship game. And if that happens, then the LSU game would probably be canceled. But look, at the end of the day, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee does not need to see Alabama play a struggling LSU team to figure out if it's one of the top 4 teams in the country. But on Thursday, the SEC presidents and chancellors will review the idea of potentially using December 19th as a makeup date.
So I want to ask you something, and I wonder if this has been raised to them yet. As cases continue to rise all over the place, one would assume that we're going to continue to see more of this. The idea of pushing everything back, has that begun to be discussed by them? Again, December 19th is when they would play these championship games. December 20th is when they're supposed to choose the 4 teams. Have they begun to consider the possibility they would have to push that date back?
No, there have been no conversations about that. I would be surprised. It's not impossible, but it would be a Herculean task. And Greeny, finding a TV window, as you know, during NFL playoffs would be extremely difficult. So You're looking at status quo, January 11th, Miami Gardens, and that's the national championship for now. But I will certainly let you know if that changes, but I highly doubt it.
Thank you. Paul, what do you think?
It's a mess, and you're right, Greeny, and there's a lot of frustration inside the SEC about player behavior. What I mean by that is, at this point in the season, we're mid-November, players are getting tired of following protocols. Halloween was a week and a half ago, and a lot of people think maybe that was one of the super spreaders that caused these issues. The biggest issue is the contact tracing. It doesn't take much. We've been through this movie a million times before. But what Heather said is really interesting. Alabama doesn't really need to do anything else. I think everyone acknowledges they're at least one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country, if not the best. But just think about that LSU-Alabama game being scrubbed. We sat here a year and a week ago talking about that game literally all week. All eyes were on that game. The President of the United States was at that game. And to think that that game goes by the wayside is a body blow, at least to the image of the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest game of the year. And for those kids at LSU who are having a bad year, that could be their Super Bowl. That could be the one thing they get to do this season. And quickly, what ramifications in your mind, Paul, does all of this have on the playoff ultimately?
Well, it probably won't seriously impact it because some of the games we're seeing get postponed or canceled are not going to be germane to the playoffs. Right now in the SEC, you have Alabama and Florida. They very likely will meet. And if Florida beats Alabama, they're